Welcome to episode 92 from the Shed End, titled No Leaders. We'll get into that later on. Theo, how are you doing?
Yeah, like I always say on this pod, I feel like a broken record. Chelsea aside, I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to another bank holiday weekend. 3 days to look forward to. King's coronation tomorrow. But unfortunately, Chelsea as well, playing tomorrow at 3 p.m. So I think my mood will be quite mixed tomorrow, and I'm sure Chelsea will let us down once again. But like I always say, doing well. Weather's kind of up and down here in London. Bit of rain, a bit of sunshine today. But yeah, how are you doing?
Like you, as always, Chelsea let me down again in a week, to be expected. Had a lovely rant on a Wednesday, I think, or maybe the Thursday. I can't remember what day it was now. If you haven't listened to that, make sure you go and listen to it. Maybe said too much, but apart from that, the sun's shining, hay fever's kicked in for the rest of the year. So I'm good. I'm good. As always, we're here. Friday therapy session is well and truly on the way. So if anyone's new to the channel, please make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and also hit the Linktree link in the description as well. That will take you to all our podcasts and social accounts as well. So make sure you do all of those things. But let's get straight into it. Bit of sad news, really, to start off with Frank Kirby ruling herself out of the Women's World Cup later on this year. Is it an ACL injury? I'm not quite sure. It was a knee operation that she needs, I think, from February. I think she hasn't played since, I'm sure it was the West Ham game, or it was a game earlier on this season. February the 9th, last game. Officially ruled herself out. She requires surgery on a knee injury. Sad news. I mean, arguably one of Chelsea's best players, alongside Sam Kerr, but massive loss for England as well. I think there's a couple of players out as well. I think Beth Mead and Leah Williamson was also out as well. So tough to go into that World Cup off the back of the Euros as well without some of your star players.
Yeah, I mean, even the Chelsea women's team, I think those 2 legs we had against Barcelona, I think we had a lot of injuries and we didn't have some of our star players, the likes of Frank Kirby, like you just mentioned, who's been injured since that away game in February. It's a big blow for England. It's a big blow for her as well. She's 29 now, so time's not really on her side. You think this could be maybe her last chance to make a England World Cup squad. She might have one last chance in another 4 years. But like I said, it's a huge blow for England, a huge blow for England, for Frank Kirby, and a huge blow for the Chelsea women's as well, because I don't think there's a kind of a scheduled comeback date on when she will return to action. I think it's just kind of described as a long-term injury and she may need surgery. So we're wishing her a speedy recovery and hopefully she'll be back into the Chelsea team in time for the start of next season.
Yeah, and not just international. I mean, club, we have to remember, club as well, massive. I think, in the WSL, it's very tight at the top. Chelsea women sitting third currently at the moment. FA Cup, obviously behind the leaders, United as well. So there's a lot to play for, club as well as country. Massive loss, I'd say, but speedy recovery as always to anyone who suffers those sort of injuries. It can always come back as an injury where you're just not the same player again. Your knee's one of those things that you actually need beyond football as well. So speedy recovery and hopefully it's not like you say, it's not a long-term injury creeping into next season as well. But we have to keep her on the same path, really, of doom and gloom, unfortunately, because we have to talk about Arsenal, a game that I personally thought we would. I'll be honest, I thought we were going to try and at least make things difficult for Arsenal, and we didn't do that at all. Poor. As I said, I spoke about it earlier in the week. I'm going to let you have your say on the lineup, on the game, subs, all of that stuff. Let me know what you thought. What did you think about the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you listen back to our previous episode 91, there was a bit of confidence from both of us, I felt. I mean, Arsenal hadn't won a game, I think, in their last 4 or 5, having drawn with West Ham, having lost to City. And I think there was another draw in there as well. But Southampton, they also drew with Southampton. Chelsea, on the other hand, they'd lost all their games since the start of April. But you just felt like maybe, given it was a London derby, it was Arsenal, it was Chelsea, you thought maybe the players would just give it a bit of something. But if you watched the game on Tuesday, you know for a fact that first half was abysmal, absolutely abysmal. But for me, it started with the lineup. I know a lot of Chelsea fans on Twitter were quite pleased with the lineup, but I think the only thing that was good about it was Aubameyang and Madueke starting. Two players that haven't featured much that deserve to start that we've been crying out for lately. But why have Sterling next to them? Why not have Mudryk? Why not have João Felix? And then again, why'd you go with a back four and why'd you go with three in midfield? It makes no sense whatsoever. It makes zero sense. You're playing a back four. That means you have to play Aspi at right back. He's finished. He's finito. He's been finished since the start of last season, the end of last season. He should have bowed out as a club legend. I mean, he still is a club legend, but it's kind of tarnishing his image a little right now, and it's kind of hard to watch him play football as well. He just looks like every time he's trying to run back to defend, he just puts his head down and lets out a big kind of gulp and just sprints, but he just can't catch up with players like Martinelli, like Saka, like Trossard. He's been a brilliant servant, but I think his time is up. It's not. I think his time is up this summer. And then like I said in my predicted 11, I would have gone with Ruben Loftus-Cheek at right wing back. That would have brought a bit more kind of attacking threat, a bit more physicality. And again, I don't think he's featured much recently, not even off the bench. I think Lampard's opted with Gallagher, same as Potter has, coming off the bench rather than Loftus-Cheek. But I think Loftus-Cheek, if you remember back to Tuchel, he was favoured at right wing back at times. He was favoured in midfield at times, and we were playing some decent football back then. Free midfield, I don't understand that. I just don't understand that. Kovacic, I don't know what he's thinking. I mean, he's probably texting his agent at halftime saying, "Get me out of here, get me to Guardiola's City or get me to Bayern Munich." He doesn't want to be at Chelsea anymore, and that's apparent with the way he plays football. He can't put two passes together. He loses the ball way too easily. He looks sloppy on the ball. He's not tracking back. It's poor. It's really poor. I would have stuck with Enzo and with Enzo and Kante, and possibly even bring Chukwuemeka ahead of them, but just Kovacic, Azpilicueta, maybe play them in that Newcastle game of the season to give them one last farewell, but they shouldn't feature, until then, in my opinion. We should be giving chances to Madueke, to Chukwuemeka, to Loftus-Cheek, to even Lewis Hall at left back at times, but those two need to they're finished now at Chelsea. They clearly don't want to be there anymore, or they don't have the ability to play for us anymore. But yeah, lineup for me was a mess. It was a mess. I know, like I said, people were happy with it, but I wasn't. And then first half, what can you say? You can see 3 goals in quick succession like that. And what annoyed me the most is those first 2 goals were literally carbon copies of each other. So we conceded one from Odegaard, where it's kind of cut back to him on the edge of the box and he just puts it in. Then the second one is almost identical. So our defense clearly doesn't learn from their mistakes and just repeats the same mistake again. And then the third goal, we have 3 players just lying on the deck. And while Gabriel Jesus just puts it in, it was just schoolboy defending. I mean, Thiago Silva was an experienced defender, but he was, put on the ground so easily. Fofana, that's 2 games in a row now, Brentford and Arsenal, where he's made to look like a clown and he's just kind of stuck there and he's not pressing enough the players. It's poor. And I think Kepa pulled off 2 decent saves against Xhaka twice, I think it was. So I think if it wasn't for Kepa, we could have easily been 5 or 6 on the night. One highlight from the game, Madueke scoring his opening goal. You could tell it meant a lot to him, but it's just such a shame that it was only a consolation goal. Hardly could celebrate it. But I think he's a player that needs to feature a lot more between now and the end of the season, and hopefully he's got a bright future at Chelsea.
Yeah, well summed up, first of all. I think you've summed it up pretty much how I tried to articulate it on whatever day it was and failed and just went on a mad rant. But I agree with you 100%. I think it showed me there was a lot of stubbornness in terms of Lampard, not willing to adapt or change tactically lineups. Azpilicueta at right back just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And even going back to a back 4, and I think I said this in the preview before the game, playing a back 4 against, who I thought was going to start was Martinelli, but even Trossard played really well there on the left, and, Saka and Jesus through the middle. Then you've got those 2, those behind them in terms of Odegaard and Xhaka, those sort of players, they were having a field day with us. They were having a field. I mean, 3 goals in the first half is comical enough. It could have been, like you said, a lot more in the second half had Arsenal not taken a foot off the gas and almost allowed us to play a bit of football in the second half. But one of the things I noticed was that even in more so in the first half, the wingers Madueke and Sterling were almost playing in midfield when we didn't have possession of the ball, which is probably something Lampard's tactically told the team to do, but he just left Aubameyang isolated. And I think there was a stat going around that Aubameyang had 9 touches of the ball forward and from kickoff. I can see why, because he's up front on his own. He's got no service. He's got nothing to run onto. And the thing with Arsenal, they play such a high line in that game that we missed the trick by not having Mudryk on that pitch, on the left side to run into that space. Madueke was trying to do it in the first half and in spells in the second half, but there was just nothing for him to play onto. There was nothing for him to do on that right-hand side. So it was really frustrating to watch. And I said in the preview, play 3 at the back, because it's Thiago Silva is going to need a lot of support in that game, and he needed it, and he couldn't get it with Azpilicueta, who, if I'm being honest, he looked shattered after 10 minutes, and that's not me being harsh. That he was dripping in sweat. It's hard. It's grueling. I can only imagine what it must be to play top level football, Premier League football. Even and I said this on Wednesday or whenever it was. We looked non-league. We looked like a non-league football club, and that's disrespectful to non-league football teams. We were that bad. We were that poor. It's just, I mean, I don't know where we go from here. I really don't. It could have been a lot worse. And the likes of City, United, they potentially won't hold back. They won't stop at 3-0. They might hit us for 7 or 8-0. So. Yeah, I don't see where we go from here. I don't see how we can turn this corner. One of the questions I want to ask you, and I think we spoke about it on here before, obviously we talk about Thiago Silva, we talk about Azpilicueta as the leaders, but even relying on 2 players over the age of 30, Azpilicueta's 33, Silva's 39. Yes, they've got the experience, but you can't see any leaders coming through in this team. Some people said maybe Mason Mount was going to be one of them a couple of seasons ago, but there isn't any leaders. There's no one in there that you can see will shake the team up at half time. And you almost sense that Frank Lampard, I think he came out and said, I don't want to criticize the lads. The lads, you're the manager. They're not your mates. It's almost like he's too nice in the dressing room. And what do you think needs to change? How do we go from this sort of vibes and party atmosphere, which it kind of feels like it is at the moment, to being regimented and knowing what you've got to do on the pitch, and the manager installing that in the players, and the players themselves doing that as well?
Yeah, I think like you just said, there's no leaders. There's 0 leaders in that dressing room. You look at the experienced players that aren't Azpilicueta and Thiago Silva. Their futures are they're unsure at the moment. Kovacic, Kante, Kovacic is probably off this summer. Kante still hasn't signed that extension. You got Aubameyang, who's an experienced player. He's going to be off this summer as well. You look at other players like Kepa, Reece James, Mason Mount. They're still too young or inexperienced to be leaders, in my opinion. They don't have that kind of vocal presence on the pitch, and they've been in and out of the team with injury as well. So there's 0 leaders at the moment, 0. And even Thiago Silva, he's a huge leader, but is his English good enough to articulate stuff in the dressing room to players, take players kind of under his arm and talk to them in English? And something else this season that's been so important, and reason more to have a leader, is all these players that came in January that need to settle in, need to gel in with the other players. They clearly haven't. I don't think a single one of those players we signed in January has properly kind of hit the ground running yet. Enzo showed glimpses of kind of promise, but even him, we paid 120 million for him. I know he's going to become a huge player, but he's got a massive ceiling. But I think he just looks a bit like, he probably thinking in his head, like, why have I signed for this club right now? Why have I signed that 8-year deal? But yeah, it's shocking. I really would love to be a fly on the wall and in that dressing room at halftime to see what's being said by who, what Lampard has to say to shake this team up, what the captain on the night has to say. Because no leaders. I've said it a while ago. I do think this team needs a big preseason together to gel, and that's even more important that what Pochettino has announced in the next couple of weeks to really just come in and sort out what he wants to do before the 1st of July when he's at Cobham and the players report back for duty. Because you look at this group of players, it's players that have been there under the Tuchel regime, the Potter regime, now the Lampard regime from January onwards. And it just looks like a group of players that clearly, need 2 pitches on the training ground to work together because there's so many of them. Players that probably don't do anything together on weekends or book restaurants together, because that's something that I noticed. The old teams would always have activities to, outside of football that they really get along with. I think thinking back to the Ancelotti days when I think he even took them all to the cinema one night so that they could bond together. But I'm not saying that we need to do this, because obviously it's all doom and gloom at the moment, and we should be focusing on football rather than kind of partying or social activities. But I think that's needed next season. I think this group of players really needs to kind of gel together and work hard together and get to know each other off the pitch as well. But yeah, I think the main problem is there's no leaders in that dressing room, 0 leaders, and the leaders that there are kind of futures are unsure at the moment. And I think that's a huge problem.
And then, I mean, that could creep into next season as well. You know, like you said, a lot of those players that we named, you know, Aspie, Thiago Silva's not going to be around much longer, playing wise, playing career wise. So I think it is a massive worry. You know, you're going to a massive critical point in our club's history, really, when you think about the next couple of seasons or so. You know, you need leaders. You need someone that's going to be able to galvanize the team on and off the pitch. You need, hopefully, Maurizio Pochettino or whoever comes in to be able to hit the ground running with some of these players that are staying for the next 7 or 8 years. So it's a worry for me. But one of the things I said earlier on in the week was around Todd Boehly. And obviously he's come out previously, said he's made a lot of mistakes in the last 6 or 7 months since taking over at Chelsea. But it seems like now is probably the right time to even review. Is he he's obviously a businessman, but is he a football man? I think there's 2 different things there. You know, being a football-minded person, a CEO almost, so, you know, bringing in a president of that sort of magnitude and having someone else underneath him who's actually got a football mind. I mean, is that an option? Because I feel at the moment, you know, there was a clip that I think I sent you where he's, you know, I think he's talking in America somewhere, and he's, you know, he doesn't mention football once. It's all business. It's all, you know, talking about one of the best, you know, being in one of the best cities in the world, you know, London, and all marketing and business. There's nothing really about the results on the pitch, which is, for me, I find a massive worry, because that's all we care about as fans. We don't care about the revenue being turned over and, you know, whatever else. We don't really care. We just want to see 3 points every Saturday and midweek games, whatever. But do you think that now is probably the time for Boehly to maybe bring someone else in that is, you know, Real Madrid do that, don't they? They have like a president or someone in underneath the owner. They have someone else in there, a CEO, a chief exec. Bring someone else in that's more football minded, as opposed to just selling the club on in 10 years and trying to recoup a profit.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly got sporting knowledge from his time in the USA with the LA Lakers and the LA Dodgers, but American sports is not, it's so different to European sports. It's like they see it as franchises, and you look at the NFL, your team can be called the LA Rams or whatever they are, but they play in Las Vegas. You know, it's completely different. They see it as a franchise and they see it as a cash cow to make revenue and money. When I think that's what Boehly was trying to like show, and he kind of proved in that interview when he's talking about being in the best city in the world, how there's all these markets in Europe where you can get top talent from. But like you said, he doesn't mention football once. He doesn't mention, you know, what the fans kind of, it means to support Chelsea from the fans' perspective. He doesn't really understand the game, and I don't think he understands English football either. So I think he needs to kind of definitely recruit someone who can kind of give him that advice, give him that kind of support he needs, and in almost that advisory role as well. Because I'm looking back now, you know, Marina Granovskaya and Petr Cech's exits last summer. I think that's a big void that we haven't really filled yet. I mean, so many people now are talking about Petr Cech as that person who was the only one left that Chelsea knew what it meant to, you know, be Chelsea through and through. And I think since he's left now, it feels like we don't really have that person who understands the club, who really wants the best for the club. I almost like we took those 2 for granted, and the kind of work they did behind the scenes. So yeah, I think there's a lot to do now from Boehly's perspective to win back the fans, because the last thing I want is another season of this and the fans to, you know, turn on him like we see with the Glazers at United and other football clubs, where it turns really toxic between the fans and the ownership. And that's the last thing I want at Chelsea Football Club.
I think it's going to happen, and unfortunately, I think it will. I think, you know, it's difficult because you never bite the hand that feeds you. You know, that saying of, I mean, he spent a lot of money, you know, and I know it's not all his own money, but, you know, he's the one that's the face of the money. So I think, you know, 600 million in the space of a year is a lot of money. So I think we could be worse off. You know, I think there's clubs out there that would snatch your hand off to, you know, bolster your squad by 600 million pounds worth of talent. So I do think it's difficult to judge. And I think we said this initially, with Bowley as well, to give him the time, give him 2 summer windows, and even Graham Potter, we said the same, give him the 2 summer windows to evaluate and see what he's done in that space of time. And I think we have to stick with that with Bowley. I think it's always going to be difficult during a transition, but the things that I'm hearing from him in terms of interviews, and Egbali I think he was at like a game recently, and they sort of gave like a little cheeky wink to a fan and said, Pochettino, is that who you want, sort of thing. It's just, maybe it's a different, it's a shift for fans. We're not used to our owners being here, there, and everywhere and talking. We're used to Roman, who was just very, like a sniper. You just wouldn't hear or see him, and he was just almost behind the scenes a silent partner to an effect. So maybe it's just a shift for fans that we've got to get used to. But yeah, I mean, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He spent a lot of money. We've got a lot of talent. I just want to see some more talk about what, the football talk, as opposed to the business side. And I get that he's a businessman, but as a fan, I want to hear more about the football in itself. But let's talk some transfer stuff. I'm going to get sick of talking about this player. I know he's your favourite number 9 in the world of all Chelsea players. But recently, and you posted it earlier, I wasn't going to post it on Twitter. Just I knew it was going to probably wind you up a little bit. But we spoke about him last week. It seems like it develops slowly every week. But Romelu Lukaku, apparently Maurizio Pochettino, should he be appointed as Chelsea manager, is keen on keeping both Lukaku and Christian Pulisic at the club. He wants them there as part of his team going forward. I've said it last week. I've said it probably the week before that. I'm not against Lukaku coming back. I'm really not. I really think it would be a good thing. It puzzles me that Pochettino wants him, but I think he knows he needs a number 9. He needs something, especially how Pochettino lines up. I think it's 4-2-3-1. I think he used to line up at Spurs in that way. So he needs a prominent striker going forward. Do you think that's a good decision from Pochettino to, if he does come in, 2 players that we kind of think might need to leave the club, he wants to keep? Do you think that might get fans backs up straight away before a ball's even been kicked?
I mean, first of all, I like the fact that he knows from now on which players he wants to keep. I think that's really promising, and he's probably watched these players in the past and seen traits and their characteristics that he thinks he could develop, or he wants to work with in this new Chelsea system or vision of his. And I really rate that. Like you said, there's 2 players that Chelsea fans have mixed opinions about. Pulisic hasn't really lived up to his hype and potential, and is all constantly out of the team with injuries. Lukaku, I could go on forever on why Chelsea fans are mixed about him. But no, I think, like you just said, we do need a number 9. The systems that Pochettino has worked in the past have always had a number 9. I'm even thinking back at Southampton. I think when he had Graziano Pele as their number 9, and he was like their target man in the box. Then he went to Harry Kane, obviously, at Spurs, and then he worked with the likes of Mbappe, Messi, and I think even Icardi at times at PSG. So yeah, he does need a number 9. I think the football that he manages and teams that he manages need that number 9 and target man or bully in the box, and Lukaku is that kind of profile. That being said, I think it's more of a question of what his current value is, what his future looks like at Inter Milan, because I think there still is that option for him to stay another year on loan, but Inter Milan seem quite reluctant, and they're in real bad they've got some really bad financial debt still from the COVID years that they need to, I think they're going to sell the likes of Bastoni, Barella, potentially even Skriniar to recoup some of that money they need. And the last thing they might want to be doing is getting Lukaku to stay over his chunky wages. So yeah, I think it is an option. I'm still so on the fence on this one. I'm really so on the fence. I mean, we need goals. I think every game that goes by now proves that we need a goal scorer. We need a player that can not just put the ball in the back of the net from a pass, but also create goals for himself. And there were times last season where we saw Lukaku do that. I'm thinking of that run at Villa Park he went on where he just bullied past, but I think it was Matty Cash or whoever it was, and got himself into the box and then won as a penalty. We don't have that type of player right now. I haven't really watched much of Inter. I don't know how he's been doing. I think he's had a better 2023 to end of 2022. But yeah, I think if Pochettino wants him, maybe there's a future for him at Chelsea. But like I said in the last couple of pods, he needs to win back the fans. He needs to kind of issue some kind of apology. He needs to prove that he wants to play for the badge again. And obviously actions speak louder than words after that. So I think Romelu, it's up to you now. But I don't know. It's still a tricky one for me. I was saying a couple of weeks ago that I wanted him to scrub the reserve players' boots if he came back to Chelsea, and I still think that should be part of his apology.
not just a video. He's got to scrub some boots as well. I mean, it's always going to be a difficult one, and I think I've said it on here before that and we've just spoke about Todd Bowley, not wanting to. He's clearly a businessman. He's not going to allow an asset as such as Lukaku, who came to the club for the fees that he did, to leave, on the bare minimum. He's not going to let him go for any less than maybe 50 million, and I just don't see anyone paying that. You said rightfully so. Inter Milan have financial issues in Italy. They are doing okay, I think. So they are in line to qualify for the Champions League just about at the moment. Lukaku, I think, has scored 4 in their last 4, maybe 5 games, and a couple of assists. So he's hit the form at the right part of the season, I suppose. But I'm still not against him coming back, and I know he's said a lot. He's almost burnt as every bridge possible that leads to Cobham and Stamford Bridge. But I think he's a player that you look at the Mudryks and even like a Madueke, Enzo. If we can get Enzo playing higher up the pitch, and Kunku, if all the news around him, coming to Chelsea, we've got players that will benefit Lukaku a lot more than his first or second stint at the club, even his first stint, I suppose, as well, when he hardly played. But we've got players now that will be able to accommodate and feed the ball into him a bit more. And I think maybe Poch is seeing that. And I agree with you, it's good that Poch is doing that homework already to see who needs to stay, who needs to go. Maybe he's seeing a new role for Pulisic. Maybe it isn't on the wing. Maybe it is a 10. We don't know, so he could be. There's a lot to think about. But one out recently as well that's been heavily linked this week is Ruben Loftus-Cheek to Italy, to AC Milan. Someone who I think even maybe last year, maybe the year before, I said was probably skating on thin ice in terms of his Chelsea career. Hasn't really cemented himself as a regular starter. Still a very top player, but just maybe not at the level of Chelsea that we need to be winning leagues and trying to compete for whatever else. But massive factor that is stopping this deal potentially going through is the wages that Lukaku, Ruben Loftus-Cheek is currently on, 150 grand a week, something that AC Milan just wouldn't pay. What's your thoughts on Ruben Loftus-Cheek potentially going to AC Milan on a permanent?
Yeah, I think I liked his mentality as well, saying that he still wants to make it at Chelsea, he still wants to play for his boyhood club. I do think he'd be a good fit for AC Milan. We've seen AC Milan pick up some English talent lately with Tomori, and they've kind of fitted in really well and kind of adopted the Italian culture and really cemented themselves into that team. I think he's very versatile as well. I've got some friends who are big AC Milan fans, and they said there's definitely a role for him at AC, whether that be as like a number 10, as a kind of a winger. I still think he's got a role to play at Chelsea. I've said this a lot on this pod, and I much rather see a player like Loftus-Cheek come off the bench than Gallagher at times. I do like the energy that Gallagher brings, but I just feel like it kind of feels like that kind of Mikel, or even when Sarri was there, Ross Barkley type of substitution, just to see off the end of the game, but not really get us a goal. Or whereas Loftus-Cheek, I'm not saying he's going to get you a goal, but he seems more of a he's got that physicality. He's a lot very versatile on the wing. He drives the ball up the pitch a lot better. But yeah, I feel like the more I'm thinking about it, the more he hasn't played in the last month or two, I think he could be shown the exit door this summer. I think again it depends on what Poch wants, but we still know that there's that big kind of 10 players or something like that we need to sell this summer, and I think he could be one of those players on that list.
Yeah, 20 appearances this season. All comp, so he hasn't played, a luxury amount of games. But I think the likes of Enzo coming into that team has probably shifted some of that. And he's 27, so I mean he's at a part of his career where, and I think I said this maybe last season, where he's got a choice to make. Does he want to sort of be a bit part player and come in and out of the team at Chelsea, or does he want to go somewhere else and almost become the main person in midfield? And I think he could do that. And like you just mentioned, Tomori going to AC Milan, who I think either won his 100th cap, I think maybe recently for AC Milan. I think Maldini presented him with an achievement award whilst at AC Milan, so he's very, very well respected at AC Milan. And I think we're finding a lot of English players are going abroad, going to other leagues and finding themselves there, as opposed to just sitting around. And I suppose the question for me comes down to, is he happy to sit on 150 grand a week and play, 20, 25 games a season? Or does he want to go abroad? Does he want to go to another, a Crystal Palace, who he went on loan to before, and actually make himself a player that, he could go on and become something even better, and maybe even prolong his career as well. The less games you play, in a way, the more likely you're not gonna have a longer career. You need to be playing regular football to sustain that fitness and carry on. So, look, I don't want to see him go. I hate to see anyone that's got potential leave, but I think at the age that he is, if he was 21 or 22, I'll be like, yeah, he needs to stay and develop a bit more or go on a lot. But he's 27. He should be, he should be in that team now. And I just don't think he's going to hit the level that we need him to push on and win a Premier League in the next 2 or 3 years. Really good player, but I think a move would be the right call. And like you said, I said it last week, FFP 30th of June. It's in the back of my mind. So I'd be sad to see him go, but yeah, I think it'd be the right call.
Yeah, it feels like it's now or never for him at 20, 27, like you said, to make that next step in his career. And Serie A is becoming such a attractive destination for these English players. You look at Tammy as well at Roma, who's doing really well. Bellingham, I mean, obviously about to sign for Madrid by the looks of it. It seems like these players are more and more willing now to play their football.
He's signing for Madrid. I'm glad he's signing as opposed to Liverpool or City.
Yeah, definitely. It would have been a huge blow to Chelsea had he signed for one of our direct rivals in the league. But yeah, I think La Liga, Serie A are becoming more popular destinations. I think before then, the only couple English players I remembered who played abroad were Beckham and Owen. But it's becoming more and more likely now that these players go abroad. And he's definitely that one, I think, that who goes abroad that will want to do well. Chelsea fans would always keep an eye on his performances, on his appearances. But yeah, like I said at the beginning, I liked his mentality of still wanting to make it at Chelsea, because I don't think we see enough of that with the players in the current crop of and squad we have. Players actually know what it feels like to play for the badge, and even those that the youth players that came through the academy, they've struggled this season. They've really struggled with injuries. So yeah, it'll be a bit of a blow, but at the same time, it could be the right step for him.
I agree. Let's take a trip down memory lane. Petr Cech, who was inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame earlier on this week. I think it was Wednesday or maybe Thursday, one of the days this week. We did a top 5 maybe last year, or our 5-a-side as well. I think we did that, didn't we? And I think we both had Petr Cech as the best goalkeeper of all time, probably in the Premier League, maybe with a hint of bias in there. But I mean, the stats read for brilliant reading, 443 appearances, 202 clean sheets, 4 titles, 4 golden gloves. I mean, he is probably arguably one of the best, if not the best goalkeepers we've probably grown up watching, as not just Chelsea fans, but as football fans as well. But just give me your thoughts on Petr Cech being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I know you're a 5-a-side goalkeeper as well, so you've got a bit of a bit more love than maybe I have for Petr Cech being part of the Hall of Famers now. So what's your thoughts on him being included?
I've actually been playing outfield for my 5-a-side team
this week. Really? You've changed?
Yeah, but just this week. I think I'll be back in goal next week because it hasn't been going too well. So yeah, Cech for me, probably alongside Peter Schmeichel, the best goalkeeper in the Premier League, in my opinion. I mean, you listed all of his achievements and accolades there, but I think the one that really stands out is the number of clean sheets he kept in the 2004-05 season. I think it was only 15 goals conceded across that whole season. Might have even been less. But yeah, fantastic goalkeeper, top professional, brilliant kind of leader as well. Really nice guy off the pitch, but you see him scream and yell at his defenders on the pitch, and he was a really good player. And I think we talk about not having enough leaders in the dressing room at the moment. I think he's one of those players that would have been fantastic to have nowadays, and it's really deserved. So yeah, really pleased for him, and hopefully there'll be a few more Chelsea inductees in that famous Premier League Hall of Fame.
I think there's going to be, isn't there? There's got to be. You think back to those years. I mean, you look at where we are now, but look back, even 20 years ago, 2003, just think about some of those players that we had in that team. Even going before then, late 90s, so I think there'll be a few that will make the cut 100%. I think they need to start inducting more than 2 at a time. I think it could take a while before we see all the players that we've grown up to watch get inducted into it. But keeping on the memory lane road for now, Legends game, 9th of September. I actually went on, as you rightfully reminded me this morning, to go on and get a ticket, which I did. First time going in the virtual waiting room, was in straight away. So I was glad I was sitting down for that, because I was in shock when I got in. But yeah, looking forward to the game. Obviously, I think it's Roberto Di Matteo, John Terry managing both sides of the teams. So, I mean, it should be a good atmosphere for once at Stamford Bridge. No stress, no pressure. But I know you're going as well, so I'm assuming you're looking forward to the game just as much as I am.
Yeah, really buzzing. Managed to get 3 tickets in the Shed Upper, so it should be a really good game. I think they also confirmed that Gianfranco Zola is going to play for the Chelsea Legends, and if he still has the same little trickery and skills that he used to display back in the 90s and early 2000s, then that'll be really exciting to watch. But yeah, really good. Really excited for that game, and also it's in memory of Gianluca Vialli as well, which is really important. I think there'll be a really nice display for him. I think a lot of those players that will play with the Chelsea Legends will have also played alongside Vialli. So yeah, that should be a really good experience, and should be good to see some former Chelsea players put on the Chelsea shirt once again. And good opponent in Bayern Munich as well. Let's not take that for granted. There'll be a lot of legends there on show. And I think it was the one with the memory game we did for Ray Wilkins back in 2018 against the Inter Milan Legends. I think I still have that match day program, and I went through it the other day. The names in that program, unreal, absolutely unreal. Like every single one of those players is one of those ones you'd have looked up to as a kid, and I think it's going to be the same for this one on the 9th of September. So yeah, definitely a game I couldn't miss. I wasn't going to miss out on. So glad I managed to get a ticket.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, like we said before we started recording, I think there's going to be a handful, if not a bit more, tickets still available. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you go onto the Chelsea website and get one. I think also as well, 50% of the proceeds from the game are going to the Royal Marsden's Cancer Charity, which is where Gianluca Vialli was treated as well. So it is for a good cause. It's not just going into the hands of the owners, it's going to a good cause. So make sure if you're around 9th of September, I think I haven't even checked the time of the kickoff. I was just glad I got a ticket. So I think it's
7:15 p.m. kickoff. Yeah,
it's a bit of a weird kickoff, but it's worth going down if you're around the London area on that day. Sadly, we have to bring it back to reality. We have to bring it back to modern day. We have to bring it back to tomorrow, 3 p.m. Tough game against Bournemouth coming up. We don't really have, if I remember correctly, we do not have the best of records at Bournemouth. I'm trying to think of our last win quickly. It's probably, I can't really remember. You're the stats guy. You're the Wikipedia.
I think it would have been October 2017, 1-0 Eden Hazard.
Doesn't read for good. Yeah, it's not good. But we have to be better than Arsenal. We have to do better than we have done past previous games. My only worry going into this game is Bournemouth are almost safe now. They'll probably see us as a easy target off the back of how we've played. I feel Lampard would be very stubborn still. Maybe go back, still stick with a back four. I would not be surprised if it's almost the same lineup, maybe with Havertz back in as to replace Aubameyang. But we have to win this game. I mean, we have to get 40 points, and we have to get 40 points quickly, because every weekend, every game that goes by, I don't know if you got to see it, but there was like a predicted table, end of season table, and it showed if all the other teams below us were to collect 10 points, I think, or to collect, I think, 9 or 10 points, we actually go down into the relegation. I think we end up being 17th or 18th come the 28th of May. So are you worried about relegation, first of all? Let's start there before we get into the prediction.
I'm worried that I don't see us winning a single one of our remaining 5 games. I'm going to be honest. I don't think we will. The only one maybe is Forest, and even Forest have more to play for than Chelsea at the moment. But I do think teams like Leicester, Everton, Leeds, who look really abysmal at the moment, maybe Allardyce's appointment might help them pick up some form. But I just don't see them getting 10 points either. So I want to say that we're safe, touch wood. But yeah, I think the other stats I saw is Brighton winning yesterday meant that we statistically couldn't finish above them, which meant that we can't get any European football as well. But yeah, I think Bournemouth tomorrow is going to be a really tough game. I think, like I said, last time we won there was October 2017. And since then, we lost 4-0 under the Sarri days. Then we drew 2-2, I believe, when Marcus Alonso got a brace the following season. A tough place to go to this season. I think since they fired Scott Parker at the start of the season, they've really picked up some form. And, we had them as the nailed favourites to get relegated. But that's no longer the case. They picked up points against Tottenham. They comfortably beat Leicester, I think was it 4-1 recently. So they look like a team. They look like a proper team. And obviously playing them in their home ground is not going to be easy. So I'm really not confident for tomorrow's game at all. I was probably more confident for the game against Arsenal than I am for this one, which is really normal.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think, just checking you was right. Spot on to 2017, last win there. Now, if we do lose this game tomorrow, Bournemouth go above us in the league, we'll end up potentially being 13th or even less, depending on how other results go. I am worried about this game. I'm not worried about being relegated. I don't think that will happen. I think there's too much would have to go against us for us to get relegated, and I just don't see it. One of the things I did say earlier on in the week was that if we didn't have the points that Thomas Tuchel did get us earlier on in the season, we would only have 29 points. So we do have to be thankful that we've got those points from earlier on before the sacking of Thomas Tuchel, and that we aren't sitting with Everton and Southampton. So look, I'm not expecting miracles from this team. I think they're all, like we've said, in Mykonos and wherever else, Dubai, they're not on the football pitch for 90 minutes. So I'm not expecting miracles. I'm not expecting us to, to go and win 4-0, but I just want to see something from this team. It'll be interesting how Lampard lines up. And I'm going to ask you, how would you line up? Not how Lampard will potentially line up, but what would you go with in terms of a lineup for tomorrow's game?
I think it'd be similar to what I predicted for the Arsenal game. I think even before we were talking about that, maybe because we could see a switch in the goalkeeper. I think maybe in the type of game that Mendy comes back in for, we don't really have much to play for. It could be a chance for him to get his first appearance since before the World Cup. But it's got to be a back three. It's got to be a back three, and it's got to be Chilwell. And if it's not Chilwell, maybe Lewis Hall. And it's got to be Loftus-Cheek as the right wing back. Centre backs kind of pick themselves at the moment with Silva, Fofana, and Badiashile. I think Badiashile's got to come back into the team as well. I'm not sure what the situation is with Cucurella. I think he's still injured, but even if he's fit, I don't think he should be anywhere near that starting 11. Midfield to Kante, Enzo with, I'm going to say, Chukwuemeka. I think there's been a few social media pictures of him, and that's sometimes an indication on who's in the manager's vision to start the next game. And I think he could play as maybe a number 10 or the kind of furthest midfielder up the pitch. And then my front three I don't think he's moved 2 players now actually, but I'd go with maybe Felix or Havertz or Aubameyang and Felix, and bring Mudryk off the bench quite quickly for this one.
Yeah, I'd start with the lineup I think we had for Arsenal. Pretty much. I think I agree with you maybe with Mendy. I think maybe, you need to change something around there because we are letting in some easy goals to an extent. And that is all down to the defense, not just the goalkeeper. But I think maybe give Kepa a rest. He's played a lot of football as well. But I agree with you. We can't see Azpilicueta as much as I love him. And I want to see him against, the final game at Stamford Bridge. I want to see him, get his, well-respected applause and thanks if he does decide to leave the club. But Mudryk, for me, has to start the game. He has to start that game tomorrow. We got to see flashes, no pun intended, literally, but got to see flashes of what Mudryk can do on the game, against Arsenal. Madueke as well. I think Sterling has to sit this game out. I think confidence is low for Sterling. I think he's a player that has had Pep Guardiola shouting at him season after season, amongst the touchline, and he's gone from someone who just doesn't look like he's got any confidence. So maybe sit him out, very much like we did with Mason Mount. Aubameyang, I'd start. I'd stick with Aubameyang. I think it was unfortunate not to get anything out of the Arsenal game, but if you think back to the Brentford game, he did have a couple of good shots on target, and he was getting into the right spaces to try and make something happen. So I'd stick with Aubameyang. I think Havertz is back in training, so he might be back in contention to fill that spot as well. But I just want us to win a game. I know it sounds so basic and just, you want to win every game, but I just want to win a game. I just want us to see, even scoring. Madueke scoring against Arsenal. I wasn't excited. I didn't celebrate. I was just, I think you sent me a picture of the fans, chanting that we'd scored a goal. I mean, that's where we are as a club. I need to see a goal. So yeah, that would be my lineup. Very much similar to Arsenal. Maybe swap Mendy with Kepa, or Kepa with Mendy, and let's hit the ground running with 5 at the back.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I do want to see Mudryk as well. I think the flash he showed against Brentford and even Arsenal for me, he needs to start. He's got that pace. He's slowly picking up some confidence, having a shot on goal as well, which not enough players do. So if there's a way to integrate him into that first 11 on tomorrow, then I'd like to see that happen. But I just think these are the type of games we'll need to be playing Madueke, Chukwuemeka as well. And it's hard to drop Madueke as well after his performance against Arsenal. So that's something else that maybe Lampard will need to consider.
Yeah, definitely. Just before we get the predictions, Dominic Solanke, ex-Chelsea player. I wonder what the odds are that he's going to score against us tomorrow. I think he's grabbed a few for Bournemouth recently as well. So if you're a betting man, make sure you look at Solanke goals. For your predictions, what are we going for?
Yeah, Jorginho could have easily scored a screamer against us. That wouldn't have surprised me at all. But predictions for tomorrow, I'm going to go 3-1 Brentford. 3-1 Bournemouth. We're playing Bournemouth.
3-1.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to lose 100%. Let's be honest. Let's not be optimistic. I think 2-0. I think 2-0 Bournemouth. I just don't see where the goals are coming from. And I think if you play a back 4, like I said, Solanke, we'll have a field day. He'll have so many options to score. So 2-0. We'll be 13th in the league come Sunday. So, roll on the end of the season.
I need that Men in Black style pen to erase my memory from this season. I really do.
That or loads of beer, whichever one takes you, whichever one suits. Both, pretty much. But yeah, let us know what you think in the comments. What would your lineup be? What's your predictions going forward for tomorrow's game as well? Don't forget to hit the Linktree link in the description, and also subscribe, like this video before you leave. Theo, as always, thank you very much. We're close to 100 episodes. This is something I did not think I'd ever say on this channel, but we're there. We're nearly there. We're 8 off it. So thank you for joining. Pretty much all of them. I think you've joined nearly every episode. Every episode we've been doing together, haven't we? So
pretty much, yeah.
Maybe the first one I think I'd done on my own. That was after a West Brom game.
Yeah, I think maybe I was still recovering, or
things are thrashing if I remember correctly. But yeah, we were close to 100. So make sure you give this video a thumbs up, and make sure you stick with us as well throughout the rest of this season. We'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks for watching and listening.